William Branham. Though long dead, Branham's legacy lives on in the doctrines, practices, and personalities that define the New Apostolic Reformation. From declarations and impartations to dominion theology and personal prophecy, the architecture of the NAR rests on ground Branham helped to lay. Yet beneath the signs and wonders lies a troubling question. What kind of foundation was actually built? Branham claimed to be a prophet sent by God, a man visited by angels, given supernatural power, and entrusted with the end-time message to the church. Those who attended his meetings claimed to have seen miracles, secret revelations, and the uncanny ability to read the thoughts and intents of their hearts. But behind the stage lights and testimonies, Branham's history tells another story, one of theological confusion, hidden affiliations, failed prophecies, and shifting public personas. His early ministry leaned heavily on oneness Pentecostals and fringe evangelists. His teachings blurred the line between biblical truth and mystical speculation. William Branham is not a forgotten figure. In fact, he is revered by many leaders in today's prophetic and apostolic movements and has even been given the title God's General. From Paul Cain and Rick Joyner to Bill Heyman and countless others, Branham is named as a spiritual father, a trailblazer of the supernatural, and a prototype for the modern prophet. His language, his stagecraft, and his theology have shaped the modern revival culture, from Kansas City to Reading. His imprint is unmistakable. But what happens when a movement builds its future on a man whose foundation was never stable to begin with? In the early 1940s, one of the most captivating acts on the revival circuit featured a curious pairing, a child preacher and a reluctant prophet. Little David Walker, a boy evangelist with a golden voice and emotional appeal, would stir the crowd with music and stage tricks such as levitation, making the audience believe his ministry was supernatural. Then, William Branham, soft-spoken, trembling, eyes low, would take the stage, claim visions from angels, and perform acts of supernatural insight. Crowds flocked to this emotionally charged spectacle, and soon Branham's name began to circulate in Pentecostal magazines and tent revival flyers across the Midwest and South. But the man sharing the stage with little David had far more obscure and deeply problematic origins. Before the revivals, Branham had served as a bishop in the Pentecostal Baptist Church of God, a fringe sect founded by Roy E. Davis, a convicted felon and known white supremacist who once held leadership in the Klan. When Davis was exposed and later imprisoned, Branham tried unsuccessfully to hold the sect together. He would later refer to this church split in his 1945 religious tract. "I was not disobedient to the heavenly vision," though he carefully avoided naming Davis, acknowledging his criminal record, or mentioning his leadership in white supremacy. During this period, Branham began rebuilding his identity. The plain-speaking man who once aligned with Davis reemerged with a carefully crafted persona, a humble Kentucky woodsman, poor and uneducated, raised without shoes, guided only by visions and divine encounters. Biographers and historians have since documented numerous inconsistencies in Branham's retelling of his early life. In effect, he began writing his own mythology, a kind of Pentecostal Huckleberry Finn, designed to charm rural audiences and shield himself from scrutiny. He eventually altered his birth year, changed details of his name, and recreated his childhood stories, transforming the bustling Casino River city of Jeffersonville into the backwoods of Kentucky. His breakout moment came in 1945 when he connected with W. E. Kidson, a oneness Pentecostal editor who published Branham's sermons and promoted his meetings. Promoted by powerful figures in the emerging United Pentecostal movement, Branham began touring extensively. His blend of prophecy, healing, and mysticism attracted thousands. Newspaper reports from the time describe multiple men carrying large cases of money from revival venues, a sign of the staggering financial power behind his ministry, even as Branham continued to present himself as a penniless prophet. This combination of strategic alliances, stagecraft, and myth-making allowed Branham to move from fringe obscurity into the national spotlight. Yet his teachings, affiliations, and ethical contradictions were never fully examined, only celebrated. From the poor and feeble attending the revivals to the leaders of the movement, all were more interested in the stage act Branham had created than in whether his doctrines were scripturally sound. By the late 1940s, William Branham was no longer a novelty on the revival circuit. He was a sensation. His meetings drew massive crowds, often overflowing into the streets. Branham was billed as a prophet, a healer, and a man sent from God to usher in a new spiritual age. Audiences arrived expecting miracles, and Branham delivered, or so it seemed. Carefully staged entrances, hushed tones, and supposed discernment of names and diseases written on so-called prayer cards set the tone. But beneath the dramatic atmosphere was a calculated system of emotional manipulation, recycled narratives, and unverifiable claims. One of the key features of Branham's revivals was his use of positive confession, a theological and psychological tactic that would later become central to the Word of Faith movement. Attendees were told to believe they were healed and to declare it out loud, regardless of how they felt. Confession was equated with faith. Doubt was considered a sin. Under the weight of expectation, social pressure, and the hype of the event, many claimed instant healings, only to later succumb to the very illnesses they had spoken away. Branham rarely followed up. Newspapers reported hundreds of people arriving on crutches and in stretchers, and leaving on those same crutches and stretchers. Reports began to surface that the same healing testimonies were appearing in multiple cities, sometimes with the same names, same conditions, and same dramatic delivery. Individuals who had been healed in one revival were presented as new miracles in another. These duplications weren't incidental. They appeared to be part of a performance cycle designed to maintain the illusion of consistent supernatural power. Branham also made dramatic claims of supernatural feats, including raising the dead. In a 1947 sermon, he declared, "A man that laid in the morgue, pronounced dead by 3 doctors when I went in, is driving a Pennsylvania locomotive tonight." The man in question was identified as Elijah Perry, a local railroad worker in Jeffersonville, Indiana.